The drug game in the New York State Department of Corrections is a lucrative but often dangerous market. So let's talk about it together. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Grow With Me, Sawyer P, where we grow together, not apart. And today, I want to get into a subject and talk a little bit about the drug game in the New York State Department of Corrections. And before I do that, I won't be using any names, of course, or anything to or give away anything that the Department of Corrections themselves isn't already keen to or hip to, or whatever you'd want to call it, so as not to incriminate or, anything of that nature, anyone that's still in there kind of running wild or whatever, but and doing their thing in the Department of Corrections, because I wouldn't ever want to cause any harm or anything like that to anyone in the prison system or anyone currently doing time. What I'm going to talk about, it's pretty prevalent, really probably in most state prisons. This isn't just New York State. I live in Alabama these days, and it's, the drug game, from what I've been told and understand, for people I know that have done time down here, and from watching videos and things of that nature, it's pretty similar, And there's two main drugs. I mean, you're going to see a variety of substances that get in. But when I was last in the Department of Corrections, I got released July 9th, 2014. I was locked up. My last time I was locked up from the end of 2012 to summer of 2014. That was on an 18-month parole violation. That was the last stint I did, and I kind of used that time to get my life together. And for y'all that don't know, if you're new here or you haven't watched any of my other videos, I did a 1 to 3 for a 1 to 3 year sentence for a burglary. I had a youthful offender status on it. Committed that burglary when I was 17. I was given chances on paper, on probation, drug court, things of that nature. Messed that up. Went on the run, gave dirty earns, got kicked out of rehabs, things of that nature. And it ultimately caused me to do that 1 to 3. So I was given a shot, initially, and I also got a 2.5 flat with 2 years, 2.5 years flat with 2 years of post-release supervision for criminal sale of a controlled substance, selling heroin to a police informant. Altogether, I got about roughly 4 years in county jail and prisons combined. Also went to Willard Drug Treatment Campus. I want to make a video about that in the future, because I'm sure there are guys and maybe females that have done time in New York State that'll see this. And if you've been to Willard, that place is one madhouse in itself, but it's a very interesting program. But let's get back into the drug game in the Department of Corrections. So, in New York, and like I said, this applies in a lot of other states too, but when I was last there, and I'll talk about what I know and have heard has changed over the years as time has gone on. It's still pretty similar for the most part, but things have changed. When I was last there was two primary go-to drugs, and those two drugs were K2 or spice, which is synthetic marijuana, and the other one was Suboxone. And there's two big reasons. There were other drugs, like you did see heroin. Sometimes there would be cocaine. Rarely was there meth. Meth really was kind of just starting to get up into New York at that time. It really hadn't blown up. I know it's a lot bigger in New York now since I moved down south, and you're seeing and hearing a lot more about it up there. But I'm sure it's probably in the prisons now. Probably fentanyl too and things of that nature. Probably a little bit of everything. But the primary market, like I said, was K2, which is synthetic marijuana, aka spice, and the other one was Suboxone, which it had the nickname Chinita. You know, a lot of the Hispanic community in there. You know, they kind of controlled. You know, from my experience in the facilities I was at, they controlled that portion of the market more than anyone else. They were the main guys getting it in. You know, a lot of the Hispanic guys and gangs, Paisas and so forth. You know, but at least at the facility I was at. But at least I'm pretty sure it was there with the Paisas. But anyways, there was yeah, the nickname it had was Chinita, which in Spanish, from what I was told, means orange. And I believe that's like the fruit orange, not the color orange. And if you've ever had Suboxone, that's you know, the strips and the tablets are orange in color. And that's, you know, and they have an orange flavor to them. So it makes sense to, you know, they're sublingual. You dissolve them under your tongue, you know, but, you know, people would snort them. You could inject them, although that's pretty rare in the system. You hear about people here in the street that do that. It's probably not the best method of ingestion for sure, because of there's many hazards involved with that. But the nickname for K2 is Tunchi, which is also, you know, if you're a hip hop connoisseur, like rap, like I do, you know, that's Lil Wayne's nickname, Tunchi, or one of his, you know, handles he goes by. You know, K2, Tunchi, you know, I don't know, I guess it just kind of sounds similar to Tunchi, so maybe that's how they made that connection, you know, and it just kind of stuck, you know. Someone said Tunchi, you knew exactly what they were talking about. And from my experience, the you know, the K2, that was more, you know, you see a lot more of the black guys, you know, a lot of the blood gangs and so forth, you know. Well, the primary, the largest with the most numbers gang of anyone you know, in the facilities I was in. It might be different in other facilities, but the facilities I was in, you know, I was in population in Bear Hill, Cayuga, Orleans, Oneida, and Willard, which, you know, that's not really a prison, but I mean, it is a population, so I don't know. But anyways, it was mostly, you know, like the Bloods. They were the ones kind of more controlling that side of the market. And, you know, I'll get into K2 first. We'll talk a little, like I said, there was other things too. There was heroin, aka diesel, or H, you know, whatever you want to call it. You know, occasionally other things would come through, cocaine and so forth, you know. But K2, a big selling point for that was it didn't give off a big odor the way marijuana does. You know, marijuana, you know, a lot of people, they get those things. Like I said, this is all public knowledge. Everyone knows how it gets in. You know, a lot of times it's either through a corrections officer, a visitation. You know, nowadays people are using drones and stuff to get it over the fence and things of that nature. But, you know, probably the biggest way is visiting room and corrupt officers. But a big selling point was it didn't give off a heavy odor the way marijuana did. And at that time, where it was kind of a newer drug, I would imagine a lot of the canine dogs weren't trained to pick up on it just yet. I don't think a lot of those dogs had been trained on it. I'm sure now this is, you know, that was 2012 through 14. It's been almost 10 years, you know, 10-ish years later. I'm sure by now they've probably been trained. There's dogs that can detect that odor, you know, by now. But also, it didn't show up on a urinalysis screen. These days, there are, you know, 16 panel, you know, drug tests. You know, on the urine screens, there's those little slots. You know, one might be opiates, one's cocaine, one's meth, one's benzos, and so on and so forth. Well, nowadays, they do have some of those 14, 16 panel drug tests that do test for spice. You know, the active ingredient in spice, which is like a chemical number, a CAS number. It's like 80HB-112 or something. I forget the specific number, but, you know, it's just some weird chemical name, you know. And but another big selling point, like I was saying, is it doesn't show up on your standard P test back then. And also they can also send your urine to the lab now, you know, to a urinalysis laboratory where they do work and so forth, and look at people's urine, and they can see what's in your system. Toxicology report. That's probably the word I'm looking for. But my gosh, there was a few times I tried it, and I'll just tell you about the last time I did it. Me and a bunkie went by the nickname Light. He was a good guy, but I won't use his real name. But me and him, we got a little bit. I think someone just gave us some. There was a bunch in the dorm, so I was like, here, try some. Like a lot of people will give you the first one to see if you like it, try to draw back in more business, because the particular dorm we were in at the time, I'm not going to say what facility we were in or whatnot, but it was way, way up north, way, way upstate New York, but tippy top in that hub up there. But this particular facility was just flooded. I mean, of all the prisons I've been to, this one, there was always stuff available. Always. If it wasn't in your dorm, which a lot of the time it was, all you had to do was go to the yard, or, sometimes you might see your homie at the mess hall and he would have some, but the yard, if it wasn't your dorm, the yard was like the, kind of like the flea market. You go out there and talk to a few people and you'll find it, Very rarely was it dry, and if it was, it wasn't long. The next weekend there would be more, because that's visitation time. But the last time I did it, me and my bunkie, we split a little stick. That's what they call it. It's basically like a joint rolled in rolling paper, because, we did get tobacco like Top and Bugler, which had rolling papers in there, and it looked like a little spider leg. It was so skinny, but I mean, when you have almost no tolerance from being locked up so long, it takes almost nothing of any substance to get you high, And I remember, we both, it's probably enough to take about 3 or 4 big, good-sized hits off of each. And my dear Lord, we were in the stall, passing them to the stall back and forth. And I just remember the terror that set in, like sheer terror. It wasn't like, at that point I'd been probably locked up 6 months or something like that. And my bunkie talked me into it. I knew I'd done it in the past while I was out on the street. And back around that time, I think the first time I ever heard of Spice was around 2010. But, so it was still kind of early days for Spice. And he kind of talked me into it. Let's get some. Why not? I'm like, all right, whatever. So he talked me into it, even though I didn't want to. But it dawned on me, like I said, this is about 6 months in on my parole violation. Like, all at once after smoking that, it dawned on me that I was in prison. Like, of course I knew I was in prison all that time, but, like, it was like I had an epiphany that I was around a bunch of violent, dangerous people, which, it's prison, that's, there's going to be violent, dangerous people there, and just the terror of coming out of that queue, I just remember feeling like everyone was plotting, scheming on me. Like everyone was out to get me. Someone, like, what if someone's got a knife? What if, normally you go about your day casually, and, rarely do those situate. Here and then you might have an altercation with someone, but, like, no one's just going to stab you or fight you for no reason. There's always a reason, you know what I mean? Unless someone's just a straight psychopath nutcase, which that does happen once in a great while. It's kind of more rare. But generally speaking, someone's got to have a reason usually to attack you, like you owe money, or you disrespected someone, or you were getting in someone's business, or whatever. Someone's trying to extort you, usually it builds up to that point. It doesn't just happen out of nowhere for no reason, from my experience. And I would think most people that's done time would agree with that. But, it dawned on me, like, you were in a very dangerous, violent place, and you're around the fly. I kind of grew up in, like, a more suburban area. Don't get me wrong, I've been to the hood. I've been in rougher areas, especially going to cop drugs. I didn't have a sheltered life. Like, my family was kind of, like, I would say upper, lower class, low, middle class, so we kind of struggled growing up, I mean, we made it, but we kind of squeaked by, And, so I've been around some rougher types, so it's not like that was foreign to me, but it just, and I was on the top bunk. My bunkie, he had the lower bunk because he got to the dorm before me, and I just remember being on that top bunk and feeling so exposed because, when you're on the bottom bunk, you're behind a cubicle wall and no one can see you. And I just felt so exposed up there. Like everyone could see me. The CO could see me from his desk, aka the bubble. He could see me. I just felt, and I just put my blanket over my head and just laid there. My heart just pounding out of my chest. Horrible, terrible. It was like a constant panic attack for an hour straight. And I vowed never again. Never, ever, ever again. My Bucky, although he seemed kind of paranoid, like he ended up doing it more. Kind of ended up catching a habit in there. Although I got love for the dude, and me and him kind of had a good friendship in there and stuff. There were periods where he made questionable decisions. He taught me how to work out and how to cook, and I'm grateful for him. He was a bank robber, but a good dude at heart. You might say, how's a bank robber a good dude at heart? But there was a lot of guys like that. A lot of people go in there and they had a drug problem in the street, made some bad decisions, and now they're in prison, But, there's stories I've heard, and I've seen guys wig out off of that stuff and fight. One altercation, there was a stabbing, a dude was kind of trying to press another guy, trying to get him to credit. A blood dude was trying to press a paisa, These are both two different gangs, a Spanish and a black gang. The blood dude was kind of trying to pressure the paisa dude to either sell him. I don't know if he was either trying to get him to sell him some K2 or, credit him or front him some. And the paisa wouldn't do it. And when the paisa went in there to smoke, the blood dude kept pressuring him. And, like I said, that stuff makes you paranoid. The paisa dude ended up going to his cubicle, and he had a sharpened up piece, waited till the blood dude lay down, rolled up on him, pow! He wasn't trying to kill him, but he was sending a message to him. He stabbed him in his thigh a couple times, like his butt cheek, hamstring, quadricep thigh area, got him a few times. And from my understanding, it was a sharpened screwdriver he got from one of the workshops, I believe. I don't know how he got it, because that's, it's kind of hard to come across a legit tool that's been sharpened, He must have got it from a maintenance dude, probably paid a good bit for it, but, I'm pretty certain he caught a new case off of that. They both got moved out of the unit, but, that paranoia had set in, and he felt like the blood dude was a threat. And the blood dude, like I say, he's in a gang, he's got numbers behind him, and he was not a small dude, man. He was probably about 24 at the time, and he was a big guy, man. He probably weighed about 210, 215, and he was solid. He was no weak dude, he was no slouch, and that turned into a big ordeal. Chairs getting thrown, other gang members getting involved, kind of turned into a little mini riot. The dorm got locked down, and that was crazy in itself. But maybe I'll share that story in full on a different occasion. But it was pretty wild. But like I said, the two key points on that was, well, it didn't have this odor that marijuana gives off. If you smoke a joint, it reeks. Like, you could be freaking 100 yards away, and you could sometimes get a whiff of marijuana in the air, you know what I mean? It felt like marijuana. The high was very similar to marijuana, which it kind of was, I'll be honest. It did kind of feel like weed, and weed can make some people paranoid, but this was just on a whole different level, for me it was. And and it's cheap too, for like a pack of Newports, or 2 pouches of top, which was like $3.67 at the time when I was there, roughly. It was 3 and change. 2 of those will get you a nice little stick. It's enough to get ripped. So for $7-ish, you can get yourself a nice little buzz. That'll last you a few hours. You could trade, people take all sorts of stuff. You could trade, tapes, we get cassette tapes in there, clothes, whatever. If the dude selling it had, if you had something you wanted, you could trade him a brick of coffee, food, whatever, stamps, they didn't care. You could, money orders, back then people did Western Unions, This is kind of before the Cash App days. I know these days a lot of people use Cash App, but real quick before I get into Suboxone, aka Chinita, that drug, the K2, is kind of evolved because it's a chemical that's sprayed on basically like a potpourri. It's like a herb that looks kind of like weed, sort of, not exactly. And, if you look at it from a distance, it kind of looks like weed, but like up close, you can tell it's not. It's green and it's herby looking, like almost like something in a tea bag. Like a green tea or something like that, kind of, sort of. But it's got the chemicals sprayed on it, So you got to think, if you got a lot of that, it would be easier to get caught with that, trying to sneak it in. You're going to have to boof it, keister, which is up the old, the old backdoor entrance, if you know what I'm saying. Have a guard bring it in. It's a little bit harder when you're dealing with volume. But these days, it's kind of evolved into something they call paper route. And they're taking that, people have discovered over time, you can take that chemical, spray it on a sheet of paper, like a letter from your loved one, or you could spray it on a card, like say a Christmas card, or a get well soon card, or an I miss you card, or I love you card. They spray it on there, they cut off little tiny pieces of it. Boom, a little square, about yay big. You roll that up in a cigarette, man. It might be a few pieces. I haven't dealt with that specifically. I think they give you like a few little pieces of it about that big. You roll that up in a cigarette and you're blazed. You were just ripped out of your mind. So you got to think it's super easy to get that mailed in. And from my understanding, a lot of facilities, in a way to combat that new form of contraband coming in, they're getting kiosks. If you get a letter from your loved one, they scan the letter now, and there's kiosks in a lot of dorms. I'm not sure if they're doing this in New York. I know they're doing this like here in Alabama. I'm pretty sure it's here in Alabama they're doing that. I know in the county jails they are. I think they are in state as well. But they scan your letter, and you got to read it on a kiosk. A kiosk is a little computer mounted into the wall. You put in your inmate number, your ID number, and boom, you log in. You can order commissary and different things from there, check your funds. And you can get, down here, you can get emails. I don't know if they've changed that in New York. I think you can get emails up there now too, but you can see your letter, boom. So now you can't really get paper envelopes. And I think that stopped, in recent years. So yeah, that's kind of how it's evolved. And nowadays, I'm not going to expose. There's still a way people are getting it in outside of guards, but I better not go into that because I don't want to incriminate anyone, and I don't know if the guards are keen to that yet, so I don't really want to put that out there. So, because like I said, I don't want to be the reason anyone gets in trouble, but everything I've spoken on thus far, they know about. It's common knowledge, So, the second drug, like I said, was Suboxone. And a big thing was the strips. For any of you, if you've ever had a Listerine breath strip, they're little, I don't know, they're something like that. It's more rectangular and, it's like maybe an inch by like 3/4 of an inch, length and width, roughly, and it's thin. Like I said, it's as thin as a piece of paper or less. And it's the size of a Listerine breath strip. If you ever put one of those on your tongue, and it dissolves on your tongue and gives you fresh breath, just like you just gargled with mouthwash. A lot of these guys, you think something that small and that thin, there's tons of ways you can get it in. Like I said, back before they started getting keen to it, they put them under a stamp, like on the envelopes. When we get our letters from loved ones, there'd be a stamp on the corner. And you could probably put one or two underneath of that, or like where you lick it, underneath the lick line, where you lick it to seal it, like you could line up probably 8 or 10 of them right there, In a package, if you're getting food or clothes sent in, you can stitch them into the clothing, there's little folds and stuff you can stitch, cut a little slit, it's super easy. There's also pills, but the strips were the better way to go just because of how easy they were to hide and conceal. And when you're carrying them on you, they're super easy to conceal. There's tons of places you could hide them. That would be extremely difficult to find unless they did an extremely thorough search. And even still, they might not find them, you know. But like I said, you know, this was more controlled. This market was more controlled by the Hispanic gangs. When I was last down, you'll find that a lot of the blood dudes, they were more, you know, they were more weed smokers, pothead types. You know, they love smoking blunts and all that. So naturally, they're going to be more inclined to want to smoke K2 because that's their drug of choice. A lot of Hispanic guys liked opiates in the street. They liked heroin. You know, this is where fentanyl, right around when fentanyl was first starting to get big. And, you know, on the street, their drug of choice is opioids, like I said, which back then was heroin. And the closest thing you can get to that and conceal relatively easy is Suboxone. You know, if you got a crazy high tolerance, you won't feel Suboxone, but someone with a lower to mid-level tolerance, you can take a little tiny piece. Well, especially after you've been locked up for a while, you ain't really got any tolerance if you haven't been using. I mean, the tiniest, tiny. See how small that is? And like I said, it's as thin as a piece of paper. That little piece, you know, you can put it under your tongue. Some people dissolve it in water, put it in a spoon, and snort it. You know, you can use a gel, you know, a rig. Some guys have ways of stealing insulin rigs from medical, and people make things called binkies. You don't see that as much in New York, but you hear about it more out west, in like Cali, and like western states, you know, in the feds and stuff. I never seen the one in state prison. Well, I'm sure they did exist. I never seen one with my eyes, but occasionally, very rarely, you'd hear someone coming across a rig. When I say a rig, I'm talking about a hypodermic needle. Some people would shoot them. You know, and like I said, these wouldn't have the extreme effects K2 does. You know, generally you're going to see guys nodding, itching, you know, staying up on a movie night on the weekends. You know, Friday, Saturday, you could stay up till like 2 a.m. and there'd be a state movie. You know, people would mix up the little Kool-Aid. They might make a little meal or something, some popcorn, some chips, or, you know, whip up some kind of little, like, Spam sandwich or something. You know, we had stove tops and a refrigerator, so, I mean, we had ways to cook in there and stuff, you know. And, you know, you'd feel really nice off of that, you know, like I said. And unless it's changed, when I was there, you know, the going rate for about one dose, you know, like I said, which is probably, I think it was about 1/8 of a strip, 1/8. So if you quarter it, and then you half those quarters, you know what I mean? So 1/8 was about 2 pouches at top. You know, sometimes, depending on how dry it was, it might be 1/16 would get you that. Just depending on how the market was at the time, how much stuff was in the facility, how many different people had it, how competitive it was, so on and so forth. You know, at that time you could buy a whole one for a $50 Western Union. It might be more now. Some places it's $100. At that time, 50s. That's a pretty good price. Because in the street they're about right now most places. Last I heard they were 10 to 20. Some people I hear get 25 for them, although that's pretty rare. You know, I think in most places, in most areas, they're 10 to 20. Probably some people sell them for 5 even in some areas. You know, if it's like there's tons of them, you know, and it's really competitive market. But I would say 10 to 20 is the average range, you know. And, you know, there were guys using these, you know, and having a great time. People were catching full-blown habits. They didn't have it, they would get sick. They'd be out on the yard begging people, front me to the commissary, my money hasn't hit my books yet, or, well, you know, my family sent a money order. Back then, they would usually, you know, you get a money order mailed in. That's how you get money, you know. Nowadays, you can get it, like, digitally deposited on JPay. I think I use JPay app. So if they mail a letter out today, it might take 2 or 3 days for it to hit, you know, the facility and then to put it on your books, you know. That was kind of a more older way, but like I said, it's changed now. And you do it all like electronically on your phone or on a tablet or computer or something. You know, use your credit card, family deposits on the website or the app. But you know, people be out there, man, yo, you know, my money's good, it just hasn't hit yet. Or you know, people would be out on the yard calling their mom and dad, being like, hey, get a Western Union. And whenever you buy a Western Union, you can do it online, or you can go to like a grocery store customer service desk. And when you buy one, they give you a little number, which is like a transaction number, like a receipt number, basically. And you can give that number to the person that has the subs or the K2 or whatever it is you're trying to get, and they can read those numbers, get on the phone, call their loved ones, read those numbers off to them, and they can go online to make sure and see if that's a legit, to see if they actually sent it, and bada bing, bada boom. If the money's there, then everything's good. They'll give you what you want, and you're good to go. And a lot of people prefer those, street to street, because that's real money, you know what I mean? It's not tobacco, it's not stamps, it's real money, And some people use that to help their families, or if their family was the one to bring it in, or their girlfriend, or their wife, or whatever. They gave them money to be able to get more so they can continue this operation and so forth. Some people would only deal cash, street to street, and they would want to move more of them rather than little pieces. Other guys like to break them down and do little bags. If it was the pill form, they crush it up into a powder and put it in a little fold of a magazine. They cut like little squares out of a magazine, put like a little line, probably equivalent to like a $10 cocaine line if you've ever done cocaine in your day. Something about that roughly. Maybe a bump, if at the littlest, a $5 bump at the smallest, and fold it up and boom. That's how they'd serve it to you, And the strips they would usually, try to put in something. I don't think they'd usually use the magazine folds. They would have to put it in something plastic, because it would absorb into the magazine, and you don't want that to happen and you lose it. One's going to want to buy that. I mean, I guess someone would if they're desperate enough, but like I said, you'd see people out in the yard, man, just fainting. Like, they spend their whole time doing that, chasing drugs, conning people. Like, sometimes people would get Tang off commissary, the Tang juice. They'd make up fake bags and sell fake bags of Tang to other people. And, they get beat up over it or cut, with razor across their face because they're selling fake dope to people, putting themselves in all kinds of horrible situations, people washing people's boxers and doing very menial, tasks that are kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word, kind of humiliating type stuff, It's like, there's types of people in there be like, hey, let me punch you in the face, or let me slap you in the face as hard as I can, and I'll give you a piece for free. And people would do it. They would do stuff like that, you know what I mean? People would sew people's stuff, like sometimes you can, a little hustle, people will sew pockets into someone's pants or shorts. If they got like athletic shorts that don't have pockets, that way when they go to the yard, they can put their cigarettes and their ID and stuff, in there. But I mean, the thing is about prison is it's all right there, It's all right there. Once you get comfortable and into a bid and start meeting people in there, you can get a lot of things that you can get out here, and if you have family helping you, you can get fairly comfortable in there. But if you ever have to serve time, I don't recommend by any means that you get into the drugs at all. There's 3 G's they say to stay away from: gays, gambling, and gangs. That's a common advice you hear in county jail, and people that have done time will say stay away from the 3 G's. But I also like to say, the 3 G's and 2 D's. 3 G's, gays, gambling, gangs, and the 2 D's, drugs and debt. Those 5 things are the biggest 5 things that'll put you in bad situations, that'll get you hemmed up, and of course, there's obvious things like running your mouth and getting in other people's business, stuff like that, that can cause you issues. But those 5 things, if you're involved in those on the regular, at some point in time, you're going to probably have at least an issue here and there. Some kind of altercation or problem's going to come up, So, I hope this video is informative. I hope y'all enjoyed it and gave y'all a little bit of insight on what it's like in the prison system, the drug game. Like I said, there's lots of other drugs. There's heroin, before subs and K2 blew up, the two bigger ones were marijuana and heroin. But now there's more synthetics and more prescription drugs. Game's changed a little bit. Like I said, you do still see those come in, but people like things that kind of bring them down and keep you calm. Kind of numb the pain. And opiates. I'm an opiate addict, a previous opiate addict in years past, and those drugs tend to numb your feelings. And a lot of people in there are just in so much pain emotionally, and some people are doing a long, long time. Some people are never getting out. Or if they do get out, it's going to be a very long time. So they're just trying not to feel anything. And it's kind of sad. And some guys do, I feel, deserve a second chance that have done terrible things, but there's some sickos in there that probably never deserve to get out, and you can use your imagination on what kind of people those folks are. There's just some sickos that I don't know if there's any possibility of rehabilitating them. But appreciate y'all watching this episode of Grow With Me, Sawyer P, where we grow together, not apart. And I hope y'all have a wonderful night. And I'm at 20 subs right now. I'm hoping to continue to grow. I just started this channel, trying to get more consistent. I love you guys. I appreciate you all. And I hope everyone has a wonderful night. Take care.